Hi, I'm Graham, and today I will be talking about the Phillips Exeter Academy Library, which is located in Exeter, New Hampshire, and built by famous architect known as Louis Kahn. The project itself for this building was commissioned in the year 1965, but the construction didn't start until a few years later, 1969, and it was finally completed in November of 1971. Now, some information on the architect himself, Louis Kahn. He was actually born in Estonia, an island off Estonia, and his original name was Itzelib Shmulwowski, and he moved to the east coast of the United States in the year 1915, during which his family name changed to Khan. They adapted that name, and so he lived in the United States for the rest of his life, pretty much. He lived from 1901, died in 1974, and yeah, his family became naturalized citizens in that year, 1915. In terms of his very early career, he displayed a lot of talent for art as a child, and he was known for using burnt twigs and matches as an alternative in order to create art because his family didn't have the funds to fund that hobby of his. But he was very talented in this regard as a young child, and he even won a full art scholarship at the Pennsylvania Academy of Art. In terms of his beliefs and philosophies regarding architecture, he was very involved in building low cost public housing in Philadelphia during the Great Depression, and a lot of his work in the 1930s centered around that. So his architectural style, earlier on in his career was mostly based off the international style and was mostly adapted from Le Corbusier and the housing constructions which he built in Western Europe, places like Germany and the Netherlands in these decades. But in the early 1950s, when he went on I think it was called a sojourn to all these countries by the Mediterranean, such as Egypt, Italy, and Greece. He visited Rome, specifically in Italy. It brought light to, different styles of architecture, which really intrigued Louis Kahn at the time and caused him to change from Le Corbusier's style, which he used during the Great Depression for these low-income houses in Philadelphia, to his own unique style, which involved a different use of light and structure, which he saw on those Mediterranean buildings when he visited those countries. And that really kind of jump started his career, later on. Now, in terms of the actual building itself, this library was really refurbished because it was outgrowing its existing building during the 1950s, and the school wanted to build a library with a more contemporary design as opposed to a more traditional one, which they already had. And they needed to accommodate more students as their student body was growing. And so that caused them to commission Louis Kahn in the year 1965. Another fun fact there is that this was known as the Class of 1945 Library in order to honor, Exeter's Academy's former principal, Dr. Lewis Perry. Now, in terms of the structural design, it's about 80 feet in height and it spans a lot or 111 feet on each side of the building. It features a very well crafted brick facade with decorative wood on the outside. And something very unique about his structural design for this building was that it's in three concentric square rings. And so the outer of the three rings, which you can see on the layout here, contains bricks in a load-bearing fashion, and you can have the four exterior walls there. The middle ring, however, was made of reinforced concrete, and its purpose was really just to hold the heavy book stacks and shelves within the library. And then that final inner ring features an atrium with circular openings in the walls, which contain multiple floors of other book stacks. Now, in terms of the materials used, I kind of mentioned that before, but there are four main materials used, which were the teak wood panels on the exterior. There was a lot of brick, and within that brick on the exterior, those brick piers were much thicker towards the bottom of the structure because that's where much more of the weight was bared on the structure. Was towards the bottom, and then, as I said, reinforced concrete was also a very vital part of the building, along with glass for the windows. In terms of the struggles and issues of design, during the design itself in the late 60s and early 70s, there weren't too many issues, at least that I could find. However, prior to the construction, the committee and people at Exeter Academy were debating for almost 15 years as to how to formulate a design idea for this new library. And two full projects with architects which were expected to replace this library, had been fully undergone before Louis Kahn had even been given commission. And Exeter's Academy really wanted a more traditional building in the 1950s before they decided to switch over to that conventional building, which was much of their motivation for hiring Louis Kahn as their architect. And in the mid 1960s, the plans at that point still were to expand on that original Davis Library, which you can see to the left, but that was rejected by the school's trustees, again, mainly because they wanted a more contemporary library design that would match the Georgian style buildings, which were already on campus. And yeah, this is good for Louis Kahn. In terms of some other aspects of the designs commission, the mid 1960s, those plans to expand that Davis Library, which is already on campus, were rejected. I think I mentioned that before. In the year 1964, the newly appointed principal, Richard Day, was really unhappy with the design plan that had been implemented by the architect at this time before Louis Kahn. And so he was fired by this principal. And this new principal appointed the academy librarian to help build a committee and rewrite the design program in order to find a new architect for this building. And so this is where, again, Louis Kahn came into play and was appointed and commissioned in November of that next year, 1965. Another reason for this was he was just admired for his unique use of brick and his concern for natural light. Now, in terms of the connection to Kahn's career, he built this really late on in his career. Not only that, in his lifetime as well. He passed in the year 1974, which was really only a couple years after this building had been finished. And so that's very impressive that he was still working that hard that late in his life. And um, he built this, after many decades after he got his unique influence and style, which led to him being hired. And so he had already been very set in his ways by this point, which definitely helped him out in terms of the construction. In terms of the conclusion, the main takeaways were just learning the importance of the contemporary style of architecture, which the Exeter Academy Library is a great example of. This applies in the United States on the East Coast and New England, where this building is, but you can see this all over the world. Of course, that's where Louis Kahn got his inspiration from, and it's just impressive that again he was able to build this such an elaborate building so late in his lifetime. And I have never seen any buildings with the three separate rings, the outer, middle, and inner ring, the middle being of reinforced concrete and the inner one being an atrium. And so I think that's a very unique design that looks remarkable from the exterior. And those are my concluding points. And here's some sources I used for that information. Thank you.